Apparently, this is one of the craziest stories to exist on Reddit, and it had people in the comments section hooked and gripped throughout the entire thing, and we are going to be reading it together today. However, this story is over 20 pages long, so part 2 will be up tomorrow on Halloween, which is very fitting because apparently it's creepy. Starting with part 1. It was 9 years ago that this was submitted, 2016. The story I'm going to share occurred over the course of several years and only recently ended. It affected almost all of the most important people in my life, affecting us even today and likely for the rest of our lives. I wanted to share it so everyone can understand just how out of control a seemingly harmless situation can become. First, let me lay it out for you. My brother has always been my closest friend. He is easily the most loving and genuine person I've ever met and is loved by pretty much everyone he meets. Despite this, he hasn't been in many relationships. I think it's partly due to the fact that he's very all or nothing type of guy. When he falls deeply and blindly. A blessing and a curse, I guess. My lips are very red. I don't know if I meant to have such red pink lips. Anyway, the few girlfriends he had I've known quite well, despite being nearly 8 years younger than him. Most of them have been nice, normal, pleasant girls with the exception of a few. We had high hopes that he'd settle in with a long-term wonderful girlfriend as he entered into his adult life. We had no idea that we would spend 6 years sharing a hell with him, our family and our close friends, all by the hands of one girl. I'll call her Pam. I met Pam when I was 11, my brother 19, and she was 17, graduating high school. I remember being surprised to have him introduce her right off the bat as his girlfriend, since neither my parents nor I had heard anything about her. But she was kind, warm, an honor student, and beautiful. I admired her immediately. For the first year of their relationship, Pam never seemed off. She was always happy, always kind, and always had good stories to tell. She and I grew closer as she seemed eager to bond with me, and it was like having an older sister. We shared many of the same interests, and friendship came easy between her and I, as I was mature for my age, and she was so inviting. But halfway through their second year of dating, we started noticing things about Pam, just small, odd habits that she had. If someone was having a conversation with my brother that did not directly involve her, or that she wasn't a part of, she tended to insert herself as best as she could, sitting closer to my brother, laughing a little louder, calling him away, etc. If any of our family or friends would ask my brother questions about college or future aspirations, she would grow increasingly uncomfortable and sometimes make comments like, "I hope you have it all planned out because I'm going wherever you're going." My parents and I would chuckle about these behaviors, assuming that Pam just loved my brother and was a bit protective. We liked her a lot and had high hopes for their relationship. I hate to think now how blind we were. One night, my brother came home late from a party. I was 13 at the time and he was about to turn 21. He walked into the door, our parents were already asleep, but I was up in the living room. I could immediately tell he was upset about something. I asked him what was wrong. As he walked into the kitchen, I realized he had a large welt on his cheek. I asked, "What happened to you?" He said, "I got into a fight. It's cool." This immediately raised suspicion as my brother was as far from the fighting type as he could be. "A fight over what?" I asked. "Pam," he said simply and went to his room. The next morning, he was driving me to my soccer game and I pried again about what had happened. He didn't answer at first, but then he said, "Pam is kind of weird." I asked how so, and he said, "I don't know. She likes to start things." Pam was a pathological liar. Apparently, she did it all the time. Looking back, the constant news stories of places she had been and things she had done didn't seem to be truthful. That night at the party, Pam had told my brother that another man at the party had attempted to SA her. My brother, being the man he is, confronted him and he said, "I've never even seen her before," and a fight ensued over the accusation. On the car ride home, Pam said that my brother must have misinterpreted her words and that nothing even close to an SA had occurred. The lying seemed to be a detrimental bump in the road and my brother broke things off. After several weeks, Pam contacted me asking if I wanted to go shopping with her. Having had a good relationship in the past with Pam, I agreed. My parents thought it was strange that a 20-year-old wanted to spend time with her ex-boyfriend's 14-year-old sister, but they let me go anyway. The day started pleasantly. Pam caught me up on her life and asked how I was and how my family and my brother were. Nothing seemed strange until she began to bring up an uncomfortable conversation. She explained to me that she had a sexually traumatic childhood, and that is why she lied so much. But she also aggressively defended herself, saying, "Whatever your brother told you was a lie. He was the one telling lies. That is why I had to break up with him." She seemed to jerk around the conversation from normal to deeply personal and strange topics. She explained in detail a lesbian experience she had after ending her relationship with my brother and told me that I should try it when I come of age, of course. I became increasingly uncomfortable with the conversation. She noticed and immediately apologized, saying that she really liked being my friend and that she loved my brother, and that is why she was acting so crazy. I told her I liked being her friend too, and that I understood her feelings. This was a mistake. This is when the phone calls began. It started with just one. She called me a week after we had hung out at 10 p.m. She was sobbing and saying that she was so sad without my brother and that she needed to get him back. Then they happened nightly, later and later each time. I would be dead asleep at 2 a.m. and receive a sobbing, hysterical, and desperate phone call. I felt so much pity for her that I continued to answer. One call was different than the other though. She wasn't hysterical, she wasn't crying. I picked up the phone at 1:30 in the morning and heard a level-voiced, monotone Pam. She said one sentence, "Tell your brother I'm going to slit my effing throat tonight." And then she hung up. I felt numb. I had never experienced that before. No one I knew ever behaved that way. I texted her over and over again asking if she was okay and telling her to not do anything. I panicked. I thought I had done something wrong and that since she told me, I would be responsible in some way. The next day, I told my brother what had happened and he said that he would go to her house to check on her. A week later, Pam arrived at my house, arm in arm with my brother. They had gotten back together and it seemed as if nothing had happened. She smiled at me and never once mentioned the phone calls that she had made to me. The next month is when things escalated again. I came home from school to my entire family sitting in the living room. They told me to sit down. I thought someone had passed away. My mother told me, "Your brother let us know how you're feeling." I had no idea what they were talking about. "Feeling?" I asked. My brother looked at me with pity in his eyes. "Pam told me that she wasn't the one who called you. You called her, and you're the one who wasn't feeling well." What the F? "No, that's not what happened. She called me every night for 2 weeks crying, saying she wanted you back." "That's not what she said. She said that you called her with your problems and that she wasn't sure what to do." I was immediately angry that her lies were continuing and that my own family believed them to stage an intervention. I showed them the text messages that she had sent me, played them voice messages, and showed my call history. That put an end to the lie. After that, I wanted nothing to do with her. My brother broke up with her again. She called him hundreds of times and sent him hundreds of messages. She showed up at our house a few times with baked goods, wanting to apologize, but we ignored her. Eventually, she left us alone and we didn't hear from her for almost a year. On my last day of class before winter break during my sophomore year, I walked out of school and I was met by an incredibly unwelcome surprise. This is where things got scary. Pam was pacing in front of the school, biting her fingernails and scratching her head. Her face looked sunken in and she had bags under her eyes. I almost didn't recognize her. I began to cut across the front lawn with my friend Liz to avoid her, but she saw me and walked as fast as she could in my direction. She outreached her arms for a hug, but I stopped. The first thing she said was, "You're mad at me?" I asked her what she was doing there, and she laughed quietly. "I wanted to apologize for whatever your brother told you. I'm sick." She used a nickname only my brother called me. I said, "I know. Please don't talk to me anymore." I started walking away, knowing my brother was parked waiting for me around the corner. Pam reached out and grabbed my shoulder as I did. I quickly pulled away and I said, "I'm serious. Leave us alone. I think you need some help, Pam." She immediately began to cry, but I turned away and I left. My brother pulled into the front parking lot of the school and opened his car door for me. "Is that Pam?" He looked through his mirror. "Yeah, I don't know what she's on, but she's crazy." That night at around 1 a.m., there was a knock at our door. I am not answering the door at 1 a.m. if someone's knocking. My dad went to it and looked through the peephole. He said, surprised. "I think it's Pam." "Don't open it. I think she's doing substances," my brother said. My mom wanted to call the police, but my brother and my dad said that we should just wait until she went away. A few moments later, she rapped on the door harder and more violently. We heard her wailing and yelling, "I hear you, effing let me in," as she cried. "She has a baseball bat or something," my dad said, coming from the room where he had looked out of his window. I looked from the den window. She looked like something out of a horror movie. She was wearing a grubby dress, barefooted. Her hair had been cut above her shoulders and was in a wild, halfway in a bun, halfway out mess. She had wiped her makeup down her face like a ghoulish movie character. She looked even thinner than she did in daylight, and she swung a metal baseball bat around as she stumbled about our yard. Terrifying and also concerning. "I'm calling the police. She must be drunk," my mother said. "No, it's fine. She's giving us a show. She will leave." We didn't know people actually behaved like this. It was all eerily entertaining for a moment, like watching a true crime show. But just as she had been manically stumbling around, she stopped. She stood still, staring vacantly up towards the upstairs bedrooms, tilting her head side to side, up and down, licking her lips. "What is she on?" said substance or something, my dad asked. Pam began to shift back and forth between laughing and yelling and crying. We all sat down as my brother tried her phone and her mom's phone to try to get her to leave. We sat there and listened to the frightening, animalistic sounds of her outside. But then they stopped. We checked the windows and she was gone. We all sat in silence for a moment, taking in the strange encounter. My father just chuckled and shook his head. My mother shook hers, pitying the girl for being so disturbed. But I was frightened. No one, except perhaps my brother, had seen just how quickly her demeanor and her mental state unraveled. From overprotective nature to small lies to pathological lies to full-blown manic outbreaks. But this was her worst, and we didn't expect anything more to come of it. We thought she would just fade away from our lives, since now she knew that we weren't going to give in to this desperation. But in the next 2 years, we learned how wrong we were. And that leads us to part 2. Let's not forget, all of this came 1 year after they broke up and had not even talked to each other. Girl, move on. She's clearly unwell. In a very genuine way. She's mentally not stable. Before we read part 2, let's hop on hydration station. Let me know what's in your cup, but drink some water. Cheers. I have a pimple in the most random spot. It's that. It kind of looks like a freckle on video, but that is in fact a pimple. And I know you're not supposed to pop them, but let me tell you, I am one of the ones who pop their pimples. It's probably why I had acne back in the day. Speaking of, I get a lot of comments on my skin in my videos. Number one, I have good lighting. Lighting hides everything, okay? Number 2, I had acne. I went on Accutane twice because I had adult acne come back when I was 25, 26, and I had to go on Accutane all over again. So I appreciate the compliments, but to keep it real, I went on Accutane and I had really bad acne. And in certain lighting, usually natural lighting, hold on, you can see acne scars, showing you, see? In really harsh lighting sometimes, you can see all my acne scars. And then look, you take a step back and my face looks flawless. Part 2. I was ages 11 to 15 during the occurrences told in Part 1. Part 2 begins at the beginning of my junior year of high school. After the wintertime incident at our house, Pam stopped coming around. She was still very present, however. Every member of the family endured daily text messages and phone calls. They ranged from apologetic and stable to incredibly distraught or outraged, cursing and making threats. I remember wanting to sleep with the lights on for several months after that incident, afraid that she would climb the fence of our backyard and I would find her standing at my window with the same vacant, crazed look she had the night in our front yard. All 4 of us eventually decided to have our phone numbers changed and block her from our devices and social media accounts. She still had our home phone number, however. Pam left some of the most frightening and haunting messages I had ever heard. I can remember standing in my kitchen with my family, my brother playing the messages back for us. One stood out. It showed us just how unstable and potentially dangerous she was. My parents and I had returned from an early morning indoor soccer game in February of 2015. My brother asked us to come into the kitchen because we had to hear the new crazy that Pam had become. The first message was about 30 seconds long and it was received at 12:30 a.m. the night before. Pam sounded mildly angry and demanded that we return the batch of cookies she had brought to a 4th of July party some years ago because she didn't want us to have them anymore. We all exchanged humored glances at how ridiculous the request was. My mother turned to leave, amused, but my brother stopped her, saying that wasn't the crazy part. My brother played the message, received at roughly 3 in the morning that day. We were confused at first because the first 15 seconds was that white noise, the kind you hear when a device plays the sound recording of an empty room, if you know what I'm talking about. But all of a sudden, in a deep, animalistic, and enraged voice, she screamed, "Stop effing playing with me, you're gonna get it," and then abruptly ended the call. We were all startled by this. I want to call the police. They need to know that girl isn't all there and who knows what she can do. My dad decided that if anything physically happened again, we would file a report with the police, but that they were just phone calls. My brother assured that she was all talk and wouldn't come around again. At this point, I agreed with my mother because I no longer felt safe. I had never been around someone who behaved like this. I was constantly anxious and I had no idea what I would do if she did come around again. I felt like I was stuck in a Lifetime movie because I didn't think that things like this happened, that someone I know so personally could be hiding such a deeply withheld, violent, and manic side. It had always been there, but we set it in motion. After disconnecting the landline, the personal phone calls stopped. We didn't hear from her ourselves, but some of the friends my brother shared with Pam would come to him saying that Pam wanted to speak with him and that she would call and message them regularly wanting his phone number. Luckily, none of them gave it. Just before summer, Pam disappeared. No one got any messages, no one ever saw her in town, nothing. Nothing until my brother received an email from Pam's mother, who my brother has continued to speak to occasionally. She informed my brother that Pam's family had moved her to the East Coast to undergo treatment for a substance habit. Probably for the best, for everyone. Pam's mother had given us more information about the mental state of her daughter. Her mother had not spoken to or seen Pam much during the time that she unraveled, when she came to our house or when she had made all those phone calls. Pam's mother had been under the impression that my brother was still in a healthy relationship with Pam the whole time and only learned about their breakup and the incidents following it. She explained that her daughter has always been a white liar, making up stories that didn't make sense, blaming others for things that she had already been caught for, arguing the truth of things that were already proven facts. I don't think she ever thought that anything she did was wrong, even when it was, she said. I don't understand it because she was not raised this way, she explained to my brother. Pam's issues were something that had always been present, but settled comfortably beneath an intelligent and attractive exterior. She fooled us, and maybe even herself. Without Pam to worry about, our lives seemed to go back to normal. I still looked over my shoulder every now and again, but I was preparing for 11th grade, my brother was beginning a new career and dating a new girl, the daughter of a close family friend who he had grown up with. Pam started to fade away from our minds. For a while, as myself and my friends began to drive, I remember noticing a car quite a bit. You know that car you see repeatedly around the area you live in? You notice it more than the others because you noticed it once and now you can't stop noticing it since you know that it exists. You know, it belongs to someone, but you never seen the driver, just the car. It was like that. I noticed it out of the corner of my eye at a stoplight, or out the window of a restaurant as I drove past it. I didn't think much of it, but I noticed it pretty much every time I was out driving and many times with my brother. I think we all know where this is going. That car is going to belong to Pam. I didn't understand how often I had seen it until one day it clicked and it startled me. It scared me. I saw it parked in my neighborhood and I remember thinking, that is the car. What is it doing here? We lived in a smaller, older neighborhood. Most of the people who lived there had been there for a long time. We knew a lot of the neighbors and houses were pretty much never on the market. New people showed up maybe every 5 years or so, and when they did, most people knew about it. So an out of place but oddly familiar car came as a huge surprise to me. I pointed it out to my brother, who had been in the car with me at the time. He said, "Oh yeah, I've seen that a few times." I didn't feel right about it, but I assumed that I was just being paranoid. A few months later, I was well into school, I had a job, and I was too busy to let myself worry, even though I did. One day at work, I was wiping down tables in front of the restaurant, and it was a pretty slow day, only a few people in the store. I remember seeing someone standing outside the front doors, just barely visible out the window. I was busy and assumed that they were deciding where to have lunch, as another restaurant was directly next to ours and people did this often. They weren't there anymore and I assumed that they had just gone next door. I went out to clear dishes off the front patio and clean up, and I saw them walking away from the store down the strip of the businesses in the plaza. Back inside as I worked, I noticed the same person walked back and forth several more times. I was weary at this point as the person seemed to linger for about an hour. I didn't think anything of it afterwards though. I was a theater student and I had to take some time off for the play I was in. Come opening night, I was so burnt out, I didn't notice anything, even if it was out of the ordinary. My family came opening night, the fourth show, and closing night. Leaving with my family on the fourth show is when I snapped back into my anxiety-ridden reality. The car was in the parking lot. It was parked a few rows away from my parents' car. I had never seen it at my school before, and I knew it didn't belong to any of my castmates. "What does Pam drive?" I asked my brother. "Pam? I don't know why. That stupid car, it freaks me out. It's like everywhere we are." A few days later, I had an answer. On the closing night of my show, I went out into the lobby of the theater to greet everyone when we were finished. I hugged my parents and my brother, but I noticed that they all looked distraught. My brother was visibly upset and my parents were trying to make conversation, the way they do to avoid something. "What happened?" I asked. Pam. She was here." I sort of felt the color run from my face. I didn't know how much of what Pam had done had frightened me until then. Did she leave? I don't know, my brother said. Don't worry about it. I went and I got my things and remembered how strangely violated I felt. That Pam had watched me for the past 2 hours without me knowing she was in the same state, let alone the same building. I decided to go home straight away. We left the building and there she was. She was looking at her phone, standing at the mouth of one of the hallways in front of the theater. I stopped for a moment, but the four of us decided to walk as hurriedly as we could towards the parking lot, hoping to ignore and just breeze past her. She looked different, still skinny, but she wore makeup again. From a distance, she looked almost like the old Pam. But as we got closer, she looked up from her phone and still had that vacant animal quality to her face. A bit of anger flashed over her face as she noticed us. She looked like she was going to say something, but we all pretended to not notice her and just continued on. She followed closely behind us. Hey, wait a minute. At the front of my school, my brother stopped as we kept walking. I heard him say, "You need to stop." We got to our car and watched them talk from a distance. I wanted to get in our car and leave, but my mom and I got in while my dad stood outside. Pam was yelling at my brother at this point. He made his way towards his car. Pam smiled artificially and waved towards my brother, shouting a goodbye to him as he went before storming off to her car. My brother stopped to talk to my dad for a moment, got in his own car, and left after Pam peeled out of the lot in the same car I had been seeing for the past month and a half. Yeah, get a restraining order. Welp, just as crazy as ever, my dad said as he started the car. We may need to call the police. We lived in a short distance from the school, but I was shaken up and I wanted my dad to drive as fast as possible. Every headlight we saw chilled me. I stared at my phone, trying not to look out the window. I nearly dropped it. We reached a street convergence in our neighborhood. At the stop sign to the right of us was her car. Dad, that's her. He drove straight and she turned the same direction. Dad, she's following us. I had never felt quite so panicked. Call the police, please, my dad said to my mother, his voice as level as ever. I stared out the back window, ducking low in my seat. My dad turned down another street and she followed again. I'm gonna go in a circle to see if she follows us, okay? My dad said. I was crying at this point as I came to this realization. For 4 more turns, my mom spoke to a 911 operator, unable to accurately name streets as they were not lit and it was pitch black outside. I laid across the back street listening to my parents yell at each other, frustrated and I'm sure frightened, and my dad cursed as she continued to follow more closely. The car was flooded with light as she turned on her lights, the grille of her car almost touching our bumper. My dad turned the mirror away to keep the light out of his eyes and sped the car up. Eventually, the light was gone and I could no longer hear the drone of her engine behind us. She was gone. We got home 10 minutes later and turned every light on in our house. My dad checked every closet and our back and side yards, carrying his weapon with him. She's been watching me and my brother, I almost said hysterically in my realization. For the past month, Pam had been stalking both my brother and I. Seeing that car had not been a coincidence. She knew what we were both doing. She came to my school function on both nights my family was there, maybe all 3 nights. She knew where I was. She had followed me all over town. She had been around our neighborhood and had been lurking around my workplace. All of a sudden, the threats became real. Pam was no longer afraid of crossing boundaries, if she ever had been. We were now in the middle of a full-blown nightmare. My family was no longer safe. She had gone away to cure one disease, but returned having fed and grown another. She was our personal terrorist with the power to single-handedly pull our everyday lives apart. And she had already began to do just that. What may seem like a plot of a bad horror movie, the psychotic ex-girlfriend wreaking havoc, became our reality, times 10. I cannot express to you how terrible it is to be kept awake by something you cannot see, but you know it exists and is waiting for you when you get out of bed. I never expected a human being could terrify me more than any horrible monster or boogeyman. Those things don't exist. Despite the terror of that night, this was only the halfway year 5 of 6, and things would continue to approach to a boiling point. And that will lead us to the final part 3. It's a pretty long one of this story, which will be tomorrow's video. Let me know your thoughts of this story so far. This is more than Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Way more. And I have no idea where it's going or how it's going to end, but I'm very intrigued. I hope you guys will be too, and you'll be watching part 2 tomorrow. Stay classy out there. Stay sassy. I'll see you then.